Anyway, 22 past the hour on What's on Your Mind. And we have a guest joining us now that will be one of the presenters partaking in one of the panels today from the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium. Will Lytle is the Director of Research. What is ESMC?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, thanks for having me on, Scott, and pulling me out of the really important event today. The ESMC, I know it's a mouthful, but that title, Ecosystem Services, is kind of an old concept, and it's really about making sure that people get paid for enhancing the way the ecosystem operates, whether it's filtering air or water or sequestering, in this case, helping sequester carbon. So ESMC is a nonprofit that was set up, and it's really about trying to provide a rigorous, scientifically rigorous, well-vetted opportunity for producers to participate in carbon markets. And so it was in the pilot stages for a couple of years after moving out of the research. Now we have a market program, and really it comes down to corporations that have made a commitment for whatever reason to generate carbon, and this is carbon insets. It's focused on carbon insets, so you can only sell your carbon credits or your carbon outcomes within your supply chain. And it strengthens your supply chain. So the corporation says, we want to reduce, let's say, our wheat emissions associated with our inventory related to our wheat. And so they go to we work to find their supply shed, farmers that are growing wheat that are selling to that company. And we help develop incentive mechanisms to help them implement practices, and we really focus on outcome-based. So in some cases, you can pay somebody to do something and it may not actually happen, and it may be through no fault of the producer. But so we focus on outcome-based payments, and so if you get it to work, if you actually generate the outcomes that are needed, then you get paid.
Dr. Lytle will be leading the panel today on incentivizing on-farm carbon management. There is obviously the ag and energy world right now largely impacted by the politicization of climate change. What is how I'd say it? I mean, is the climate change is it a political issue or is it a scientific issue?
I always think of it as I believe in climate change, but I think in this case maybe it's not even really relevant what you believe. It's really about what actions can we take to make our communities stronger. And I think we can see that, for rural America, the future is that there's going to be energy development in rural America, and there are going to be groups that are trying to source, carbon credits. And so being ready to understand how to, develop assets that allow us to reach those markets without allowing us to be exploited or, have our assets severed from our farm. So I believe in climate change, but I also don't agree with the vast majority of, quote unquote, political solutions to the problem. And I think, we could solve climate change and still be left with a really, really horrible planet that, has all sorts of, maybe child slavery and toxicity and, chemicals that are, plastics in our body. And so, it's really important to understand that the goal we need to work towards is, resilient, strong, economically profitable communities, and overly focusing on just the carbon piece it would be a mistake.
What do you say to people who say they're just going to pull the rug from underneath us and change the rules once we've solved this problem? Like North Dakota is obviously in a unique position to be able to store carbon, also
Absolutely.
Enhanced oil recovery for carbon. A corn farmer can have a $4 bushel of corn rather than a $2 bushel because he could go to an ethanol plant that then is used for sustainable aviation fuel, as an example. But a lot of people say, sure, you play to the rules of the game as they exist now. There's a market for it, so you gain monetarily. As you say, you got healthy ecosystems economically, but then they change the rules.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The rules that exist right now are probably not the rules we're going to see, or the prices that we're going to see in 10 or 15 years. So you can, because we have a voluntary carbon market in the U.S., groups are kind of choosing how to bite off, the portion that they want to tackle in terms of, let's say their carbon liability for large corporations. And so right now the market's unstable, so the prices are pretty low. But I think as that kind of float, the easy outcomes and easy credits are purchased up, I think everybody anticipates that the price for carbon will go up, and the level of rigor will intensify, and in some cases, even if it's not a mandatory regulatory carbon tax, that the changeover from right now it's the early adopters and the innovators that are participating out of their own interest and goodwill. I think the pressure will be for everyone to start adopting, and I would anticipate seeing things like crop insurance being tied in with your practices at a higher level, stuff like that.
Which is one of the reasons you're talking about on-farm carbon management today. Where's the low-hanging fruit for our ag community?
So this is really interesting. The low-hanging fruit in terms of the markets is associated with things that they have a lot of data on, and so that they can measure. And so it's the major crops, and then the most common conservation practices. So cover cropping, nutrient management, and no-till. Those are not necessarily the biggest bang for your buck in terms of what you could do as a farmer, but it's the things that that groups feel confident compensating you for. There are bigger things, and some of them are kind of unbound. I think biochar is a great example. It's really complicated in terms of modeling. Whether you put on a truckload or you put on 30 truckloads of biochar, depending on how deep you bury it, some of the options are totally unbound, and you could add a lot of carbon.
Fascinating. Will Lytle is with the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium. You can find out more about them at ecosystemservicesmarket.org. The Director of Research there, Dr. Lytle. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Appreciate it.
Enjoy the conversation. More from the North Dakota Farmers Union for the Evolution Ag Summit on the Carbon Conundrum today. Coming up, and what's on your mind? Don't go away.